everyone, Happy New Year! I'm sure 2020 is going to be an amazing year.
For the past month or so, we've been receiving emails and phone calls from people asking us where the birds are. They're just not seeing as many, or actually no birds at all, at their bird feeders. And there is an explanation. In some cases it might be predators in your area, or maybe a new neighbor that put up a bird feeder and feeding birds something different. But in most cases it's the weather. For example, this winter I find is really mild. We haven't really had any cold days, and I can tell you that birds prefer natural food to our bird feeders. These berries, normally when we have really cold November and December, they're gone by this time, but not this year. So there's been enough natural food for them to eat, and they haven't even touched these berries. So I recommend watching the weather patterns. I've just checked and we're expected to have 4 days of snow. That's a lot of precipitation, and that normally brings back birds to my bird feeder. So I filled them up. I've got the suet feeder, I've got peanuts, mixed sunflowers, and the safflowers. So if you're going through a mild patch and you're not seeing any birds, it means that they're somewhere in the wild eating the natural food. So don't waste any precious bird food, and don't fill your feeders as much.
This environment was inspired by the Guernsey's pitta. It's a lovely small colorful bird that breeds in the Malay Peninsula. It was considered extinct for over 100 years until scientists in 1986 discovered that these birds were being sold at pet markets. Well, the good news actually didn't last long, and the bird is nearing extinction again, this time due to habitat loss. You see, the rainforest where the bird lives is being cut down to plant palm oil trees. So of course our automatic reaction is, let's ban all the palm oil and all the products. Well, that's actually not a good solution to the problem. You see, palm oil is actually not so bad for your health. It requires less land, less fertilizers and pesticides than any other vegetable oil plants. And worldwide it is supporting over 3 million small farmers. So how do we solve this problem? Is by making palm oil production sustainable. This is what Rainforest Alliance and a roundtable on sustainable palm oil are trying to do. At the moment, there are only 4% of farmers that are certified, but they're sure they can convert all of them. All they need is the demand from the consumers. This is where we come in. Please start asking and looking for sustainable palm oil products. Here are a couple of links to help you out. Here's a question from Jim Showalter. I sprinkle millets and cracked corn for juncos on the ground, but lately I've been seeing a red-bellied woodpecker eating this food on the ground. I have a squirrel-busted peanuts and suet close by, so I'm wondering if this behavior is rather unusual for this woodpecker.
Hi Jim. I looked at my very best source of information on the feeding habits of red-bellied woodpeckers, and nowhere could I find any reference to them spending a lot of time foraging on the ground, let alone for cracked corn and millet, especially when it's got shelled peanuts and suet sitting there in feeders nearby. Red-bellied woodpeckers are about as generalist as a woodpecker can get. They employ a wide variety of feeding strategies to eat insects of all kinds, acorns, nuts, fruit, seeds, small vertebrates like mice, lizards, and small birds, and sap and nectar. They tend to forage on limbs, branches, and tree trunks, but if food's available on the ground, they will indeed go after it. Here's my take on this particular bird. Birds can be as individualistic as humans when it comes to foraging strategies. I've seen peregrine falcons in some cities eat nothing but pigeons, others eating everything but pigeons, and still others eating everything they can catch. Maybe this particular woodpecker simply got tired of eating suet and peanuts and wanted something different. You did rule out my thought that it was not looking for insects among your seeds on the ground because it was too cold for them to be available. Connie, I'm assuming that your bird was not injured in any way and fully capable of flying up to those feeders. Let's face it, it's hard to know what's going on in their tiny brains.
Every time there is an oil spill, we're shown pictures and videos of birds and wildlife covered in black oil. I find it all very disturbing, but thankfully there are always volunteers, well, never really enough of them, who help with cleaning the birds. However, we never really hear whether these birds survive or whether they live long afterwards. I always thought that the oil did too much damage for the birds to live happily ever after. Well, I was wrong. A king-eyed duck was caught during an oil spill in February 1996 in Alaska's Pribilof Islands. Luckily for the duck, it was cleaned up and taken care of by the International Bird Rescue Center in Fairfield, Alaska. Well, this duck just died, aged 24, and apparently it's had a very normal life. Bird Rescue also tells us that it is possible for the birds to be rehabilitated and to continue living a normal life. The problem is always not having enough resources and staff to help them out with cleaning the birds. So if you ever find yourself anywhere around an oil spill, and if you have a few extra hours to spare, please help out. Every South African I've ever met told me wonderful stories about the beauty of their country. KwaZulu-Natal is a coastal province in South Africa that's known for its beaches, mountains, and savannas. And now it's also known for mass poisonings of vultures. KwaZulu-Natal is home to 3 species of vultures: the African white-backed vulture, the lappet-faced vulture, and the white-headed vulture. All 3 are endangered and their numbers are rapidly decreasing. And this time it's not because of a habitat loss or climate change, it's because of the locals poisoning them for their body parts, which are supposed to have magical powers. I will actually quote from the article what these vultures are being used for. In many parts of Africa, vultures are believed to have psychic powers, including an ability to see into the future. The brains of the bird are dried, rolled, and smoked as joints or simply burnt and the fumes inhaled. Users believe that this improves their odds when they gamble. Students take it when preparing for exams. Other reported uses of vultures include consuming their eyes to improve eyesight, their beaks for protection, or their feet to heal fractured bones or make a person run faster. Well, I'll keep my comments to myself. Have you ever heard of a biosecurity dog? Sounds like a very important job. Well, it is. The first job position has actually been just filled in the UK in an attempt to control rodents, particularly rat infestations on seabird islands around the country. The dog will be trained to detect, not to hunt and kill rodents, and then traps will be set up to capture the intruders. This method has been successfully used both in New Zealand and Australia and is part of a huge EU-funded scheme to protect species at high risk of global extinction. Earlier this year, the RSPB and Natural England and National Trust ran a similar project to protect puffins, Manx shearwaters, and guillemots, and their populations have seen an increase since. Well, that's the end of episode 1, season 4 of Brombird News. Don't forget to look for sustainable palm oil products, and these are the photo contest themes for this year. Take care, everyone.